read the script and immediately thought of Matthew. And the only other person that came right to mind was John Cusack.
There wasn't really a whole long list of hot young actors.
Well, there was several, but it was also just sort of think, because the character, unless it was done right, could be a real obnoxious brat. So that one, more than most, it was sort of obvious who we needed.
I got the script. It was just a normal. It got sent to me. I was doing Biloxi Blues on Broadway at the time, and I was a little bit concerned about, was I doing this, repeating myself too much? It was only, I'd only been an actor for 5 years or 4 years, but if I had any hesitation, it was that, was I being typecast or something? I had played sort of this charming Neil Simon character, but it was really so different. It just at that time in my career, I just remember being very concerned about trying to do a variety of things, and that might have caused me some pause. But I basically read it and thought it was just amazingly original and hilarious, and I was just thrilled to be asked.
I was thrilled when we got Matthew, because then I wasn't sure where we would go. And it was a difficult part because it was also, besides the sort of the buoyancy of the character, he had to talk to the camera, which can be difficult and hard to pull off.
I had done Brighton Beach Memoirs, which was a character that talked to the audience, and so did the character in Biloxi Blues. So then when I got this script, it was kind of another character who talked to the audience. In fact, I thought, oh, wow, is this going to be what I do from now on? It seemed like every part I did, I broke the fourth wall. Never had one lesson. But it was very different. It was the first kind of contemporary comic role I had gotten.
Ferris was doing what I think everybody at some point wants to do, which is just say, how could I be expected to go to school on a day like this? This is a beautiful day. I have things to do, and I'm going to take it easy.
How could I possibly be expected to handle school on a day like this?
I had a very good time working with him. He's very accomplished. He's a mature actor. He's got everything in place, and he does a number of different things. He can play a variety of roles, and has, and is just a real A actor. And it was really a great pleasure for me to work with someone like that, and someone who had very strong opinions and would throttle some of my tendencies, push me a little further in certain areas. I like that.
If you're not over here in 15 minutes, you can find a new best friend.
You've been saying that since the 5th grade.
I was actually in New York in Biloxi Blues with Matthew. So I knew that he was being offered this picture, and then he took it. And then I was called in to audition, and at first the casting people didn't want to see me because I was in my late 20s. And then my agent said, well, he plays right next to Matthew every night on stage, and they play the same age. And I went in, and they were like, right, he looks very, very young. And they liked me, so they called me in to read for John Hughes.
Well, I'd known Alan for a long time. He was going to be in my original Breakfast Club cast when I was going to shoot the movie in Chicago a year before I actually shot it. I was going to do it as an independent film.
So I went in and I read with Matthew, and the great thing was we were already pals. We didn't have to make anything up. Oftentimes when you're in a movie and you have to play somebody's brother or husband or boyfriend or son or whatever, you have to sort of try to make this instant history. You try to bond with whomever immediately. We didn't have to do that.
And it was just great. Here are these two guys who'd worked together, who knew each other, who were friends, who had to play friends. And there's a great deal of benefit to doing that. I didn't bring two strangers in who had to simulate a friendship. They truly were friends. And another of those little intangible things that somehow shows up on film.
I do know, however, that I think before they asked me to do it, I'm pretty sure that they asked Emilio Estevez, and I heard Anthony Michael Hall too. They asked him to do it, and I don't know about Anthony Michael Hall, but Emilio was like, I don't want to do that, So I'm eternally grateful. Every time I see him, I just say thanks, for taking the big pass.
You knew what you were doing when you woke up this morning, didn't you?
Me?
And I thought, what kind of girlfriend would Ferris have? Ferris could have any girl in the school, and I thought he would choose somebody very elegant and very restrained, rather than someone loud and brassy. And he would go for a partner, someone who could be his accomplice, someone who could play the clever companion.
Sloane is the ground between Cameron and Ferris, because Ferris is, on the one hand, a man who can do no wrong. He can talk his way out of any situation, and then Cameron is totally neurotic and can't deal with anything at all. And I think Sloane is more realistic, more true to life, I think. You know, I mean, nobody is like Ferris Bueller. And hopefully no one's really like Cameron, because it would be very sad. But I think Sloane is a very grounded person. And I think that's why Ferris loves her, because he always needs some kind of foundation. I think Sloane is Ferris's foundation.
I like Mia very much. She just graduated high school, so it was all very familiar territory to her. She was the age of her character.
We screen tested a handful of girls for that, and I think Mia, I think she was really quite new. It was, you know, one of those, meet a bunch of people, and she was a beautiful girl, had a great quality, sophistication, and got the part.
I think John just fell in love with her.
Mm-hmm.
Mia looked like the right fit, as I recall. I think they had cast Alan and me at that point, and then Mia seemed to make the trio, because it was really kind of a trio.
That triangle, I was making a triangle. I was making a boy, his girlfriend, and his best friend. It's this classic third wheel situation, which I was always in. I always had me, my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and some guy in the back seat saying, "What are we doing?" You know? And my wife was always very, very close with those guys, because she was the shoulder that they cried on. And I was always very fond of that triangle.
Look, it's real nice that you hope my brother's feeling better, but I'm in danger, okay? I am very cute, I am very alone, and I'm very protective of my body.
I play a girl named Jeannie Bueller, and it's Ferris Bueller's sister. Jeannie's 1 year younger than he is, and is very much overshadowed by him, feels very frustrated. She's just like a ball of frustration and anger, the way, you know, a lot of siblings are when one of two gets a lot of attention, and Ferris gets tons of attention, gets away with murder, and she just can't get away with anything, and she just alienates people because she's so angry and frustrated. She just keeps people, you know, people just think she's a creep.
And then Jennifer Grey. We met her in New York. When she walked into the audition, she was Jeannie. She walked in as Jeannie. It was kind of also, it was almost like, well, this is it.
Well, I was, you know, hadn't done much. You know, it was really at the beginning of my career, and I remember reading the script and kind of not getting it, and not really getting like all those monologues, and I was really like stupid, because I really didn't get how great it was, and I kind of didn't really want to go in on it, and I kind of went in anyway, and I just, you know, and I walked in and I met John Hughes, and I just fell crazy in love for him. I just was like, oh my God, I just thought he was the greatest. Immediately, I had immediate connection with him. And all of a sudden I was like, well, let's see what there is here.
Isn't Mrs. Hagel expecting you in consumer ed class?
Probably.
What a little asshole.
I would never play somebody as an asshole. I would always play somebody who is just so unfairly treated, who it just is livid, because it's just not fair that he should get away with everything and I get away with nothing. I mean, that everyone can relate to that. And I think if you're coming from, she's really in pain. Jeannie Bueller is in, you know, a whole world of pain. So it's not like she's just trying to make people miserable everywhere she goes. She can barely contain her grief about her life.
All right. You want to know what's wrong? In a nutshell, I hate my brother.
We had our hatred moments too, but yeah, she's great in the movie. She's so unflinching in her fury at her brother.
Well, you know, hate really does look like love. And I think that it's, you know, if you really want to look like you love someone in a movie, really hate them. I think that that's also a really effective way to get there. Sometimes love doesn't look as passionate as hate.
When I first read the script, I thought it was really a wonderful script. And my agent said, "You'll love this movie." So I read it and I said, "Yeah, it's really well written." She said, "This is going to be a big hit." And I said, "Well, okay." So I went to see John over at Paramount. And I didn't realize that I'd known him before. And then and of course I connected and went, oh God, yeah. And I'd loved him. I thought, as a matter of fact, to this day, I think John Hughes is probably the best director that I've ever worked with. He was one of those people that was so encouraging of what I did. We were all cast, There was Matthew and and Alan and all these people, and we were at Paramount, and so we all were in a room that sort of assembled around couches like this, and they were interviewing some other characters, and one was the wife. And Cindy came in and just fumbled everything. She couldn't get the phone, and she was trying to make everything work, and everybody was just hysterical laughing at her.
Lyman, my Mr. Bueller, who became my husband in real life, was in there. He was reading with me. And it was this horrible, actually I think it was the 9 times scene on the phone with the principal.
This is all news to me.
Usually is. So far this semester, he has been absent 9 times.
9 times?
9 times.
I don't remember him being sick 9 times.
So I picked up this phone, and there was some horrible sound on the other end, like something really horrific, which made me completely lose my concentration. So I did this terrible audition scene, and the minute it was over, the scene was over, and I hung up. I don't know what I did to this day, but I had some reaction to what had happened to me that they all just cracked up laughing, and it was obviously the essence of what Mrs. Bueller was, because I got the role.
And when she left, we went, of course. She was just perfect.
How's Ferris? Let's go in and check.
Okay. Yeah. How was your day?
We actually saw each other before we even went to film, because we knew that we had had the job, and I wanted to spend some time and see, what she was like, and so we had sort of a casual meeting.
So he showed up in an antique Mercedes and a bouquet of irises, and I was so enchanted by that. And we started dating a few times before we went to Chicago to shoot the movie. So we actually had a chemistry going on before we went in front of the camera.
By the time we got to Chicago, we were a little more than casual. And so what you see on film is more the situation.
What is so dangerous about a character like Ferris Bueller is he gives good kids bad ideas.
Uh-huh.
Last thing I need at this point in my career is 1,500 Ferris Bueller disciples running around these halls. He jeopardizes my ability to effectively govern this student body.
I mean, there is one guy in this movie who is the authority figure, who really regards Ferris' absence as like a personal affront.
I did not achieve this position in life by having some snot-nosed punk leave my cheese out in the wind.
He really personalizes this thing and goes out. Basically, he's afraid that he's going to lose control of the student body, because this kid is obviously more popular than he is and has more influence over the students than he does.
Well, Jeffrey is kind of the star of that movie in a way. I mean, he's the other side of all the fun that we're having. He has a way with a kind of pretentious principal who thinks he thinks things in his life and his job and his secretary are very important.
Ed was pretty much of a paper tiger. He was not that formidable. You knew that Ferris was smarter than this guy and was not going to get, there was only one brief moment when it looked like Ed was going to get it. And he was so happy because he was going to win.
Looking for this?
If you think that there's no possibility that he's going to be discovered, then it doesn't make his day as perfect as it was. And his parents were easy to get over. Ed was not as easy to get over, but Ed was also not very bright. So, and you know he wasn't going to win. He just wasn't going to win. So, but at least he stood some chance of ruining Ferris's day.
Oh, Ed. You sounded like Dirty Harry just then.
When I was looking for the secretary, either I ran across Edie Blinkler's picture in our files or was submitted or something, and I knew. It was almost like in my mind I stopped looking. That one really stands out in my mind. It was probably the only time that I had the confidence to just say, well, this is it.
I came in on a regular call. It was a school secretary, and I knew it was taking place in Chicago or the suburbs of Chicago. And I knew people with Chicago accents, and my aunts and uncles are from Wisconsin, right next door, with that upper tier, you know, that accent, you know, with the ea. And so I decided there was a line in the audition script with the one of, Ferris is very popular. The Sportos, the Bloods, the Dweebies, the Dickheads, the Wastoids, they all adore him. And that's the way the line ended. And I thought it would be funny to hear in the Chicago accent,
they think he's a righteous dude.
And John laughed, because I didn't tell anybody I was going to add anything. But I'm an improviser. Whenever I'm working, I add the noise of life to whatever is in the script. Because as you go about life, there's little comments that you make to the side that can't be scripted. But in the moment, they are appropriate. So he laughed, and I got the part. And I think it was by adding, you know, the accent and that dude.
Bueller. Bueller. Bueller.
Ben Stein was John Hughes. John knew him. John said we're going to use Ben Stein. I had no idea who Ben Stein was.
When time came to choose a teacher for Ferris Bueller's Day Off, they had several teachers. They wanted me to just do one simple thing, call the roll off stage. Adams, Adamley, Adamowski, Bueller. And the studio extras, who were students, laughed so hard, and all the crew laughed so hard, that John Hughes called Michael Jennings aside, and they had a hurried conference, and they said, we're going to put you on camera. We'd like you to improvise a scene of subject you really know well, and just do a scene, and just, we're not going to write anything, you just improvise it. We're going to set up a scene of a classroom. So I thought, well, what do I know really well? And I thought, well, let's see, I know really a lot about the Great Depression, so I'll teach about the Great Depression.
To alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression.
So I just improvised that scene on camera. And we just did it all in one take. I did it all out of my head. There was not one word written. And everybody laughed and laughed and laughed and applauded. They did something I've never seen before on any set, which is they formed a semicircle around the camera and the sound people. And when I was done, they applauded. And Matthew Broderick came up to me, and he said, that was incredible. He said, you're a great actor. Have you done much work on Broadway? And I said, well, I'm not really an actor. This is only the second movie I've ever been in. But I knew something good would come of it, and I was probably the happiest I've ever been in my whole life that day.
He is as mystified by their reaction as they are by his. There's no communication between these people whatsoever. They're staring at him, and he's just rambling on, and it's as though he knows that they don't understand what he's saying. He has to say it. He'd probably much rather talk about something else, but it's economics and it has to be discussed.
But see, here's what happened. When they started applauding afterwards, I thought, hey, they're really happy. I've taught them something about economics, about the effects of tariffs on trade and economic policy and economic growth. They're proud of me for teaching them about economics. But no, they thought it was boring. But even now, when I watch it, I think it's quite interesting.
I had suggested Charlie for the movie because I'd done Red Dawn with him, and I thought he was really, I think Red Dawn was maybe his first movie. He just was new on the scene, and John had worked obviously with Emilio in Breakfast Club, and so I said, it's his brother. You've got to meet him. I think he's got a real, star quality. You've got to see him. He's really cute. He's really got a great charismatic thing. You got to check him out. And they auditioned him, and he got the part, and he was just so perfect in that movie. I mean, I loved doing that scene with him, and I loved him in that scene so much.
You didn't tell me your name.
Oh, well, it's Jean, but a lot of guys call me Shauna.
Okay, Gene.
Ferris Bueller's was the first opportunity I had, and I got a call completely out of the blue from my agent saying, well, John Hughes wants to see me. I'm like, that's great. but he wants to see you in Chicago tomorrow. And I'm like, great. So I jumped on a plane and I ended up in some fancy hotel and waited all day to see John Hughes, like, you know, the Wizard of Oz or something. And finally I was given audience with the great man. And it was up in some suite in a hotel. And he's a big guy. And he was sitting there and he was wearing all denim. And I was like, wow, he had this weird haircut, and I don't know what it was. And he was there with Mia Sara and Jenny Gray. And I'm like, this is really cool. I'm in the room with a film director and two really cute girls. And
Well, Richard Edson has such a great look, and I think we laughed a lot. When he came in, and John had a lot of fun in auditions. I mean, he loved to tell stories. So actors were very comfortable. I mean, when you came in to audition for John, you had your time with John.
You really
and you
had
chatted
all of his
and,
attention.
Yeah.
He'd spend a lot of time with people.
And we didn't talk about anything. I mean, we talked about, I don't know what we talked about. Chicago Cubs, New York Mets. We didn't talk anything about the movie, except a little bit. He said, well, you know, I got this idea, this guy, this parking valet, and he's got a buddy, and they steal a car, and what we have in mind is that we're going to follow you all around town. It'll be like a parallel movie. I'm like, that sounds great, yeah, I'm ready. And they shipped me off back to New York, and then I heard the next day, it's like, yeah, he wants you to come out here and do it. So I did. Why not? So I come out there, and I remember they give me the character didn't have a name. And I was like, I'm not going to play a character without a name. So I said, oh, fine, go name yourself. And I thought the guy was like Eastern European for some reason. I don't know. Maybe just the look I was sporting at the time struck me as East European. So I picked out the name Smiznik. I don't know where I got that name, but Smiznik, because it doesn't have any vowels.
Adams? Here. Adam Lee?
Here. I was 15, and I got called by my agent to do an audition for this John Hughes movie called Ferris Bueller, and it's just a little part, you know, go in and read for it and, you know, see what happens. So I found out that I got the job, and then I got a phone call from John Hughes, and he said, listen, I feel really bad. I hope you're not mad at me, but the part that I hired you for, I already shot it. I realized location-wise I needed to do it while we were in Chicago, so I had somebody do that part. And I was like, oh, you know, and he goes, no, but I wrote you another role. I wrote you another part. And I go, okay, you know. He goes, so I want you to come down, and you're in a classroom. We'll get the, you know, the scene to you, and this is the part that I want you to do. Her name's Simone. And I go, okay. So I get this sides, and it's like this big, long tongue twister of a line where I have to ramble on and on and on, and I'm like, how the heck am I gonna learn this, you know? So I went down, and, you know, we shot the whole classroom with Ben Stein and everything, and John was just, you know, so cool and so much fun, and, you know, we'd just do take after take after take, and, you know, it was like this tongue twister, and if I screwed up, then we did it again, or he'd change the dialogue on me, you know, like that, and I'd be like, ah. But it was a really cool experience for me.
I do think that all goes back to John. I mean, you know, it's his imagination, and he comes up with all this stuff. And I think then absolutely in the casting, he's got I think it's who makes him laugh, you know. A guy named Jonathan Schmock played the maitre d'.
I'm suggesting that you leave before I have to get snooty.
Snooty?
Snotty.
Snotty? I'd started to write. I was doing stand-up comedy with a partner, Jim Vallely. We were the Funny Boys. And we were doing stand-up comedy, and we met with John Hughes. And we were going to try to sell him an idea and pitch him a movie. And we just would sort of hang out with him and started to talk, and it came up that he was doing this. And he said, well, you want to play this part, or you want to be this guy? And I was like, okay, sure. And so I got to do it.
I've had enough of this horsing around. Give me the phone back.
You touch me, I yell red.
I hate him. Because we all go up against that guy, and we all wish we could be, we would be able to outsmart him. You know? Because Ferris is willing to go a step further than my guy can go.
A, you can never go too far. B, if I'm gonna get busted, it is not gonna be by a guy like that.
And I've never been that smart to be able to outsmart that, you know, that mid-management, mid-level kind of officious jerk, you know.
I appreciate your understanding.
Don't think twice. It's understanding that makes it possible for people like us to tolerate a person like yourself.
There's some great lines in the movie. You know, it's always really thrilling and satisfying to be a part of something that becomes
part of the consciousness.
Part of the cultural consciousness, and Ferris Bueller is certainly one of those films that locks you into a particular time, and it was a terrific movie.
Well, you know, I'm really pleased. I'm really happy that I was a part of something that so many people have enjoyed.
When I look at my career, I think about this as the most fun I think I ever had, and the first job where I actually kind of felt myself kind of inhabit a character in a way that really made me feel satisfied.
I don't know why it holds up. You know, it's just one of those things that works good, and it must have it struck some chord that it still does, and I don't really know why, but I'm certainly very pleased that it does.
When I die, which I feel will be soon, I'm sure that it's going to have a picture of me, and above it it'll say Bueller, Bueller. And the fact that I went to Yale Law School, the fact that I was a columnist for the Wall Street Journal, columnist for the New York Times, wrote 30 books, that'll all be washed away. It'll just be Bueller, Bueller, and it'll be an incredible thing. It'll be fine. In fact, I've said to my wife repeatedly, I just want on my gravestone, he loved dogs and Bueller, Bueller.
And we're rolling. Yes, it's a deal. We're pushing it. 2, 4, 5. 5 to the road, please. Sure.
And action. John Hughes is not a normal person. He's an extraordinary genius. I mean, he's not like your normal self-involved, self-impressed, wildly self-praising and self-pitying Hollywood screenwriter. He's a genius.
And the stories of John's speed of writing scripts are all true. Ferris Bueller, the legend is, and I think it's true, is that there was the threat of a writer's strike. And Ned Tannen came to John and said, I want you to make a movie for me, and I want you to make a movie right now. And if you don't write the script or turn it into me before this writer's strike might happen, which was like 3 weeks from then we won't be able to greenlight it. So John said, well, I have an idea, let me think about it. And he went home and 7 days later turned in Ferris Bueller.
I remember him saying, I think 6 days. He said, I wrote it in 6 days. And some agent at the time said, think how good it would be if he'd spent 7, you know, or 8 or some joke, but a mean joke, I guess. But I guess it just spilled out of him very quickly. I think most of his movies were written rather quickly. It's like he gets an idea and then just locks himself up and out they come.
You know, John as the director and the producer and the writer, I mean, it was all out of his head. He had a very rounded view of how character, story, and photography all work together. And also because of his position, he was able to incorporate ideas as they came. Even if it hadn't been prepared for, if there was an idea that arose or a situation that needed expanding, or he could see it on the day and take advantage of it.
He would start rolling film and then, you know, play with the lines a little bit, always making sure he got what was in the script, and sort of be open to what was going on in the moment. I think that's one of the things that I think he was greatest at, from a character point of view, from a comedic point of view, that he was very open to what was happening with the actor and with the rhythm of the dialogue in the moment.
my French, but you're an asshole.
You're absolutely right, sir. You've hit the nail right in the head. Find out where she is.
I mean, he's a man who really has to have that power, who has to sit on a throne. In fact, I gave him a chair that's very low to the ground. I don't know if anybody will notice it. We had the whole desk, the whole thing lowered, so that when he's sitting at his desk, his secretary towers over him.
John said, I need, some kind of frantic action, if we could go from one office to the other. And there wasn't anything scripted for it. And Jeffrey Jones was very much a script guy.
He wanted a sense of panic and disorganization. I'm not exactly sure how much of it was scripted and what wasn't, but I know that a great deal of it was ultimately we just did it and the camera was running and we just made stuff up.
So John said, can we do some stuff back and forth between these offices? And I said, okay. And Jeffrey's eyes got really wide and he said, what are we going to do? And I said, well, we'll play a game. You remember the bowling games? This one is called Help Hinder. I'll look like I'm trying to help you, but I'll get in your way. So that'll give you something to play against. So in whatever direction I'm going, you'll be going in the opposite direction. Help hinder. So we'll just see what happens. So that whole scene where we're going back and forth and he drops the phone and I pick it up and try to be him. All of that done, complete, one take. Because it truly, Jeffrey was frantic. And I knew where we were going. Whatever way he was going, I was going to be going in the opposite direction and try to impede him. And it worked out great.
Somehow we got it on film. We knew the basic outline of what to do and put it together. And that whole thing of Edie pulling pencils out of her head, she came up with that.
And I decided I was going to do the bubble hairdo. I looked at her age, and I figured she had a bubble hairdo when she was in high school, and she thought she looked best that way, so she kept it. So I teased it up as big as I could and then smoothed it down and sprayed the hell out of it so it wouldn't move. And I arrived on the set. And John looked at me and he said, how many pencils can you think you can fit in that hairdo and that wouldn't fall out if you bent over? I said, well, let's just see. So I just started sticking them in there and testing it and sticking them in and testing it. So we got 4 to stay without, being seen by the camera or falling out if I leaned forward. So that's how we came up with the first shot of Grace.
John Hughes is just, I haven't seen him for a long time, but when I knew him, was hanging out with him, I just have always been knocked out by just how smart and funny he is and just how I loved working with him. I loved his playfulness and the way he would just make the face he wanted me to make. And I would just mimic him doing his Jeannie Bueller face, and just bug your eyes out, bug them out more, and I'm like, really? Do you think this is just gonna look really bad and really big? And he'd be like, no, just do it. And so I'd be like, I was just so nuts for him, I would just do anything he said.
It's all right, Grace. It's Ferris Bueller, a little twerp. I'm gonna set a trap and let him fall right into it.
I'm sure Jeffrey thought up a lot of stuff and was inspired by John. John was very happy for people to be active and take an interest in how to make gags work, and he just loved it. He would spend all the time he needed getting those things to work right. And
playing the bad guy is always probably the most fun. And for Ed, getting what he deserves, it was so much fun.
John likes to shoot a lot of coverage, not just in terms of sort of improv with the actors, but different, like he'll do the same line, medium shot, semi-close-up, and a tight close-up, and then build a rhythm in editing. He was very interested in the rhythm of editing, the character rhythm of editing. So scenes that were a give and take between characters, and there was a lot of dialogue, he took his time with.
There's a drive, left field, twisting, and into foul territory.
When we were at the ballpark, we did the lines, and then he'd say, just do something to take us out, And so I started doing this stuff. It was something that the kids in the neighborhood used to do when I was a kid, when they played ball, and they would say, He can't hit, he can't hit, he can't hit, he can't swing.
Hey, swing, batter. He can't it, 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 swing, batter.
He would keep the camera rolling, and he'd say, let's do that again, and at the end of it, say it. And he'd give direction while the camera was rolling. Try it the same way, but at the end, pause before you say this line or add this line. So the editor had a lot to work with.
A lot of that stuff is done in editing too. It's so nicely edited. You know, the triple kick that Jennifer does on Jeffrey, you know, those are just happen later. That's John. And I kiss Mia when Jeffrey is watching from the school. And that's a whole editing trick. That was just a brief kiss, and it's turned into that long. That's all Paul Hirsch. So a lot of that movie was really polished up in post. It's a beautiful job putting it all together, I think.
The 1961 Ferrari 250 GT, California.
That car at that time was worth about $350,000. Now it's over $1 million. So we couldn't even afford the rental, because if we rented the real car, the insurance to just have the car sit still on a movie set, nobody drives it, nobody does anything, it just sits still. The insurance was astronomical, so there was no way they could afford it. So we had these kit cars that were fiberglass bodies over a Mustang chassis. And so these cars were a headache because they just didn't, they had little gremlins in them. They didn't want to work right. There were 3 of them. There was one that we rode around in, and then there was one that was souped up for the stunt guys and had like a heavy-duty suspension and a bigger engine. And there was the one that was just a shell. It was just wheels and a body that went out the window. There's one little scene where we go back to the garage after we've had our big day, you know. We pick up the car, and so we're doing a bit of the scene, and the car comes around the corner, and then we pay the guy or something, so he turns the car off, and then we say goodbye, and we turn the car on, and we go. Well, we would do our little scene, he would come around the corner and turn the car off. We'd do our little bit of dialogue and go to turn it on, and it wouldn't start. We did this like 12 times in a row.
In the sort of Cameron climactic scene where he goes crazy on his dad's car, which was in a location in Highland Park over a ravine, again, I think we had 3 days scheduled to shoot. It was a lot of dialogue. It was a big scene. It was complicated. And I think it took us 6 days to shoot, but it's an amazing sequence.
They had a very elaborate setup to send this thing out the window. They had a pulley system where there was a cable attached to the car, and it went around a pulley and then out through some other pulleys, out the driveway, down the street, around the corner, down the block, and it was attached to a pickup truck, like a tow truck. And so when I lean against the car and it starts to go, 2 blocks away or whatever, the truck took off and went, and so shot that thing like a top, and it crashed through the glass. And then they were a little concerned because when it went down, and they had all these cameras running at the same, I can't remember how many cameras they had shooting that thing in slow motion and everything, you know. When it went out, when it crashed, the fiberglass, when fiberglass breaks, it tends to rip. And so a little piece ripped on the hood, and then they were very scared because it's supposed to be an aluminum body, and then everyone would know it was, you know, not a real Ferrari. So, but they did something. They did some artful placing of branches and, you know, debris on top of it. Nobody, you can't tell.
Well, I was shooting a parade sequence in Chicago, commandeering a parade in the center of the city and tying up traffic and putting Matthew on a float and having him sing Twist and Shout for 10,000 people. As a kid, I was always on that street, walking up and down the street, and I worked, when I was in advertising, I was about 2 blocks away from there, and whenever there was a parade, I'd slip out of work and go stand there and watch the parades go by. And here I am, you know, 10 years later, having my own parade.
And it just turned out that right in the middle of our shooting was this parade, a huge parade, and I'm forgetting, but it was something like the General von Steuben parade, who was a German or a Polish-German general who had helped during the Revolutionary War. And so the city said, here are the people to talk to. They were thrilled. They said, yeah, we'll let you shoot it.
The parade is certainly something I'll remember forever. That was nerve-wracking because you felt you had to get it. I mean, there were something like 10,000 people in some of those shots. So, you know, you want to get it right because it's hard to get all of them to come back again. And we had worked very hard preparing for that. And I think they did like a promotion like on the radio, you know, come to be in a Paramount movie, you know, which really means come work for free all day. You know, but people are like, yeah. And but then when they got there and they blared the music out, everybody really had a lot of fun. Kenny Ortega choreographed that stuff, and we worked really hard on it. And then early on in the shooting, there's a scene where it takes place late in the movie where I'm running home, my father's in a car, and we almost see each other, and then I run through a house. Inside the house, that's a stuntman takes over for a moment, but on my way out the back of the house, I hurt my knee. I had a knee injury that I had knee surgery years earlier, so I almost couldn't do that jogging. So the parade stuff didn't shoot until toward the end of the shoot, and I was just terrified that my knee would hold up. And it didn't quite, so a lot of the original choreography for that is not in it because I was literally just barely able to do it at that point. So poor Kenny Ortega's choreography with knee slides and all these things didn't work. And I remember learning it, and then I also remember John Hughes with a bullhorn saying, now do it again, but just don't do any of the steps, just make everything up. And I think that's mostly what we did, we just made it up. Yeah, the window washer guy, I think that's spontaneous. I think that's a real person. I'm not sure. But then there's that beautiful mix of actual dancers, you know, along the sides too, that looks so cool. And all the girls on the floor were great. And it was really, really thrilling. The most exciting times I've been involved in, probably, in a movie.
I really love that I worked on it. I love that I collaborated with John. I did several other movies with John, which I love also, as a producer and as an executive. I'm really proud to be part of something that's endured for so long and inspires again. And also, you know, I can look at this movie and go, this movie's great, you know, all these years later. So clearly something I'm very proud of.
Everybody in that movie is great. There's no fluke about it. It was cast brilliantly, written brilliantly, directed brilliantly, and it appeals to the very most basic part of the human spirit, which is to be free, to be able to do what one wants, to have a day off and get away with it.
Yep. I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Bueller. Bueller. Bueller.
Hi, this is Ferris Bueller.
Ferris Bueller's online too.
It's Ed Rooney, Ferris.
Ferris.
Hi, Ferris.
Ferris Bueller, little twerp.
Ferris
Bueller.
Ferris Bueller, do you know him?
And remember who you're dealing with. Bueller. Ferris Bueller.
He's a righteous dude.
I'm taking the day off. Now get dressed and come on over.
With Ferris Bueller, I wanted to do a film that showed someone for whom life was easy, that they weren't beset with problems. They weren't labored with all of the difficulties that everyone else is. And I really just wanted to do something that was show the positive values of not taking yourself quite so seriously, which is one of the great problems of that age, is that you tend to take yourself very, very seriously, and that there are times when you would benefit by not taking yourself quite so seriously.
Save Ferris, save Ferris. Save Ferris Bueller?
Ferris Bueller is a hero in this school. I mean, everybody knows who Ferris Bueller is. He's fun. He like some people, he attracts good things. There are people, and I'm sure everybody knows somebody who lives a life that is bigger than normal, and Ferris is one of these people.
Ferris Bueller to John is sort of he's more than a person. He's an attitude and a way of life and sort of a leader of men, I think.
He's so great in this movie. He's so charming and funny and appealing that there is no Ferris without Matthew. You know, it's just one of those things where the part and the actor merge.
Matthew's a New Yorker. His dad and his mom were both in the theater. So he came from a tradition and a background that I certainly recognize. And he started as a theater actor. At a young age, understood showing up on time, knowing your lines, being consistent, working with others. It's not all about me, 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 me. So we got on great because we were both on the same page about making this thing work.
He's a very, very good actor, and I liked what he was doing on Broadway. He was addressing the audience in the Neil Simon plays. He would step out of character and address the audience, then go back right into character. And I felt that he would be comfortable with the convention of addressing the camera, which is not an easy thing to do, because basically you're acting to a piece of glass for someone who will see it a year later. It's a very unusual thing.
One really fun thing about that movie I remember is shooting all the stuff from the beginning and the end of the movie, where I'm alone in the house talking to the camera a lot. Since there were no other actors there and there was most of the shots were very simple, my memory is we were just making stuff up as we went along, and that was such a pleasure to be able to do. And I remember John saying, you work best when you're alone. But that was amazingly fun.
So much of a character depends on the character of the person playing it. Actors always like to think that they can, I can do anything. I can be taller, I can be smaller, I can be older, whatever. You are what you are, and you bring with it who you are. So Matthew brought with him his particularly quirky, peculiar style, which he had right from the outset. That was him. But also it was just because of Matthew's persona and how he delivers lines that made it so charming.
I appreciate your understanding.
Don't think twice. It's understanding that makes it possible for people like us to tolerate a person like yourself.
I think he was a great choice for that part because he came out of the womb cracking wise. This is why Matthew is kind of like Ferris Bueller. We did wardrobe tests on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. And the day after the wardrobe tests, I came into the rehearsal room, and Mia was there, and she was just as quiet as could be. And John was there, and John was very quiet. And one of the producers was there, Michael Chinich. And I said, "What's wrong?" And Michael Chinich said, "Well, we saw the wardrobe tests, and there's no chemistry." And I didn't know what to say. I got very scared because I thought it's my first really big part, and I'm going to get fired before we start because it's just not happening, right? And Mia and I just said, "Well, we don't know what to say. We're ready. We know we've done our homework. We're prepared. We're ready to go."
I just remember somebody saying that we hadn't sparkled enough, and I just said I didn't know that we were supposed to sparkle. I didn't know to sparkle when I was, I thought it was about the clothes.
And that was exactly true. It's just that, everybody, it doesn't matter if you're the director of a film or producer of a film, everybody's nervous, because you don't know what's going to happen. And he completely put everyone at ease, like that. And then it was all okay, because he's so confident. And Matthew is blessed with effortless charm.
There is a charm about Matthew. And there was such a effortlessness that John creates on the set. I know when we were doing the scene with him in bed, both scenes, the beginning and the end, like the scene where we're tucking him in at the end, and I tuck him in, and he goes,
"Your blanket."
I had actually forgotten. I was supposed to pull the blanket up, and I'd forgotten, but it was such a charming moment. It just made it more real, Blinky. Oh, there was just kind of a love affair going on the set between the entire cast.
I said I fell in love with John. First I fell in love with John, and then I was like, but I really love Matthew. Yeah, I was just a goner. I really loved every minute of working with him and being around them, and it was just a really fun show to be on.
So many people say, oh, they identify with Ferris, but I really think that if people are honest, they realize they're more like Cameron than Ferris, because there are some people like that who, can completely, fall into a bucket of shit and come out smelling like a rose, and are so self-confident, as he is, that he turns all his attention to me.
Cameron, this is my 9th sick day. If I get caught, I won't graduate. I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing it for you.
He's great. He knows where he's going. He's great. He's like, my buddy's got some problems, and he completely focuses his energy on me, you know? So he's a great guy.
If anybody needs a day off, it's Cameron. He has a lot of things to sort out before he graduates.
At some point or another, everybody needs somebody to just say, you can do it, you know? It's okay. You're all right.
That's the thing people don't realize sometimes about Ferris. He was a great friend because he helped his friend liberate himself.
You don't want this much heat.
I want it. If I didn't want it, I wouldn't have let you take the car out this morning. It is possible to stop Mr. Ferris Bueller, you know. No, I want it, I'm gonna take it. That's it.
Ferris Bueller tells us we can all have a day like that. And you don't have to stop having days like that when you're grown up. You can have a day like that any day you feel like having a day like that. The secret is your own inner mobility and your own inner love of freedom. And that's what Ferris Bueller had. And the self-confidence that Ferris Bueller had. I mean, he was astoundingly self-confident. We all would like to have that kind of self-confidence.
So many people aren't like Ferris Bueller. A lot of people don't really do whatever they want. A lot of people are so restricted by themselves and by everything around them. You know, I think that the wonderfully attractive thing about Ferris is that he has no restrictions. He sets no restrictions on himself. He will do anything.
He had a lot of skills. He had good comic skills, and he had an enormous amount of confidence in himself personally. And that sort of impish quality that Ferris Bueller had, he also has, Matthew Broderick had. And I always like to find people who have qualities in their own character that are similar to the qualities in the written character.
Most people who recognize me, who say, you know, they tell me they love my work, but they say my favorite is Ferris Bueller. I do hear that a lot. You know, you want to say, well, I've done a couple other things, but I'm mostly just thrilled to be associated with it, to tell you the truth.
Adams.
Here.
Adamley.
Here.
Adamowski. Adamson.
Here.
Adler.
Here.
Anderson. Anderson.
Here.
Bueller. 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 The closest I've ever had to a perfect day like Ferris Bueller's Day Off was the day I had working on Ferris Bueller, so it really worked out very well for me. Ferris Bueller's Day Off was my perfect day.
My first film was a movie called The Wildlife, which was a sequel to Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It was cast and studio executived by, so to speak, by Michael Chinich. Michael was a good friend, close friend, through a fellow named Steve Green, who used to be an executive at Warner Brothers, and also through a fellow named Eddie Blyer, who was a high executive at Warner Brothers, and who was friends with Bill Safire, the famous New York Times columnist, who was my predecessor as a speechwriter for Richard Nixon. So really it all started with Richard Nixon, because had I not gone to work for Richard Nixon, I would never have met Bill Safire, never have met Eddie Blyer, never have met Steve Green, never have met Michael Chinich, never have met John Hughes, never been in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So really, Richard Nixon started it all.
I love being in a movie. Any sane person would love being in a movie. Any person who is life-size for most of his life would like to have a few minutes when he's 40 by 60. You have to be crazy if you're a human being not to want to be large and immortal. And that's what a movie makes you.
And I knew I was going to be a star because the day it opened, which it did at a theater in Westwood, I walked down the street to a little Chinese restaurant with my wife, and I was just having a solitary, incredibly inexpensive dinner, and people had seen the preview mobbed me. So I thought, I'm going to be famous. I like it. I want to be famous. And I remember I told my friend Deanne Barkley, who was then, I believe, a high executive at NBC, I'm going to be famous. She said, you won't like it. It'll be a pain in the neck. But I do like it. I love being famous. I was once in an elevator at a very nice hotel on Grafton Street in Dublin. And I went up in an elevator with a group of American musicians. And I said to them, you're obviously Americans, what do you do? And the guy said, well, I'm Kurt Cobain, and I would say I'm somebody or other. And I said, it might have been London, but it was either London or Dublin, I forget what. I used to go to Europe a lot more than I do now. And I said, oh, great, you're really, really famous. And he said, Bueller. I thought that was really fun. Well, so, I mean, everyone knows. Well, when I saw Mr. Bush, I saw Mr. Bush at the first White House Christmas party after he was elected, and we were all going through a line, he puts his arm around me and says, Bueller. He said, I was just watching Ferris Bueller on the plane, on Air Force One, and there you are.
I think the serious message of Ferris Bueller is, one, that some people are a lot luckier than others. Two, that if you do what you really want to do, things work out very well for you, that there's a kind of karmic force that carries you along. And three, that there are just naturally some winners and some losers in the world. I guess four is that a person who is doing what he wants to do sort of enriches everyone else's life as well. I thought that at the end of the movie, wherein Ferris Bueller has essentially gotten away with everything, it is the encapsulation of every person's dream.
This is to comedies what Gone with the Wind is to epics. It will never die because it responds and calls forth such human emotions. It isn't dirty, there's nothing mean-spirited about it, there's nothing sneering or sniggering about it. It's just wholesome. We want to be free, we want to have a good time. We know we're not going to be able to all our lives, we know we're going to have to buckle down and work, we know we're going to have to eventually become family men and women and have responsibilities and pay our bills, but just give us a couple of good days that we can look back on. I think when John Hughes wrote, produced, and directed Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he was writing about a human need as basic as the human need that Jefferson wrote about in the Declaration of Independence, the need to be free and to pursue happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Very basic stuff. And I don't know that there's ever been a happier movie. I mean, it's a movie that you cannot watch without feeling really, really great. The thing about John Hughes that's unusual is that he really sees right to the heart of the human creature. And he really understands it unbelievably well. When he did The Breakfast Club, at first when I saw The Breakfast Club, I thought, oh, I hate this movie. It's all about self-indulgent kids full of self-pity. But then I thought, well, that's the human animal is full of self-pity. The human animal is basically a self-pitying biped. You know, Samuel Johnson said, I think, described human beings as an ungrateful biped. But it's really, and more in the 20th and 21st centuries, more an ungrateful biped. And John Hughes understood that, ungrateful and self-pitying. In the 21st century, 20th century, John Hughes got it. Man and woman are self-pitying bipeds. I don't act very much because I can basically only play myself. If somebody says to me something like, do an accent, I say, I can't do an accent. Or do it some different way. I can't do it any different way. But I can play myself to a T.
It's fun to be a laughable character. I spend most of my life being a very serious character, and I love being a laughable character. I think anyone in his right mind would like to make people laugh. I think the highest goal of any human being would be to be a successful stand-up comic. You know, even Richard Nixon, for whom I used to work, loved to tell jokes, and I think his secret ambition was to be a stand-up comic. I'm not kidding, honestly. Take my wife, please. Seriously. I mean it. Seriously, I'm not kidding. Working on this movie was the most laughs, the most giggles, the high point of my life ever since I helped write Richard Nixon's resignation speech. It was, seriously. I'm not kidding. Take my wife, please. I mean it. I'm totally serious. I mean it.
Yes, everyone wants to be Ferris, and what a guy Ferris was. He didn't do a single, you know, it's really interesting. He didn't do a single thing to hurt anyone in the course of the movie. He sort of made the principal back down. But other than that, he didn't do a single thing to hurt anybody else. It's sort of like, if I may use this very, very, very extreme analogy, it's sort of like the New Testament. In the New Testament, Jesus Christ does not hurt anyone. In the Old Testament, there are a lot of battles where people are killed. In the New Testament, Jesus doesn't hurt anyone. Ferris did not hurt anyone. He just freed the people he was around.
Ferris Bueller is who I want to be when I grow up.
Here I am, I'm 60 years old, okay? So I'm an old guy at this point. I mean, I hope to be a lot older, but, and even now, when I walk down the street in Georgetown, I have a place in Washington, D.C. near Georgetown. I have houses all over. I'm like a housing fanatic. And I walk down the street in Georgetown on a summer night when there are all the college kids there to be summer interns. Every few steps, somebody says, Bueller, Bueller, anyone. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. Because, see, Ferris Bueller liberated me, too. Ferris Bueller said, you don't have to be locked away at your typewriter, because then we had typewriters, not computers. You don't have to be locked away in the closet writing. You can be yourself and let people see your personality, and they'll like you for it, and they'll admire you for it. You don't have to hide in a back room somewhere. You can be on the other side of the camera with your picture being shown to people, and you'll be America's darling. And it worked. It worked unbelievably well. So that since Ferris, America is like a small town to me. Everywhere I go, people say Bueller, Bueller. It's incredible how it's made the whole world into my oyster, and I owe it all to Michael Chinich and John Hughes and God's grace to me. There's only one other thing I want to say. If I hadn't been in Hollywood, if I hadn't been going around to the studios pitching scripts, if I hadn't met Michael Chinich, none of this would have happened. The ultimate rule of life, propounded to me by one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, Joan Didion, is you can't win if you're not at the table. That's what happened to me in Ferris, and that's what Ferris is saying too. You got to get off your ass, get out of your room, go out among the world and the hustle and bustle of the world and take your chance, and then you can win. You can't win if you're not at the table. I didn't make it up. Joan Didion made it up, but it's genius. And I must say, it was the greatest day of my life. You know, I graduated as valedictorian of my class from Yale Law School. I was a speechwriter for Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford. I've won many, many awards and prizes. I've had best-selling books on the New York Times list and the Wall Street Journal list. None of it meant as much to me as that day doing Ferris Bueller. And I just felt as if an angel of God were shining his light down on me, or her light down on me.
I'm Chet Huntley. This is David Brinkley. And this is Face the Nation.
Okay. Alan, how do you like the part of Cameron? Have you enjoyed playing it so far?
Very much so. I've enjoyed playing the part of Cameron very much. Because he's nothing like Lee Harvey Oswald. I think that's what I like best about him.
I think he's a little like Lee Harvey Oswald.
No, nothing like.
This is your second time working with me, also. We worked together in
Biloxi Blues.
Right. That's right. You're a stage actor. I know you've done a lot of theater.
Yeah, that's.
And I've been
called
too.
that.
Well, how do you like films? This is your first big part in a film, isn't it? Like.
Yeah, I like it. It's great.
Well, how do you think it's different than a play? Anything different about it?
Well.
That's fascinating.
I'm sorry.
For all the young actors out there.
No, this is pretty funny. If it was up to Cameron, if he came up against a conflict of any kind, right, he'd probably just say, oh, I'd rather go home. I'd rather watch television, right? But, and even stuff that's not that bad, but just a little bit of a hassle or is a little uncomfortable, you know, Ferris, like, makes him go through it. He's like, no, you gotta come with me. Come on, it's gonna be cool, you know. And so that's good. So that loosens Cameron up a little bit. And about the other things he goes through, basically he just stops, well, you know, it sounds so cliche, it sounds really corny and stuff. Stops running away from himself. So corny, you know, and that's not what I want to say. So,
You know, that's why, that's partly, I think,
you know
why
what
we're
he
friends.
gives up. Cameron's been trying so hard, I'm sorry.
No.
Cameron's been trying so hard to keep himself together. And being with Ferris and just the things that happen in the show, he just gives up and he realizes it's no big deal. I can, you know, I let it hang out and to hell with it.
It's that difference in us that makes us friends in a lot of ways, because as uptight as he is how loose I am.
Alan, what is Ferris Bueller like? Describe Ferris Bueller's character.
He's a king.
It's the sausage king.
He's the sausage king of Chicago. Ferris Bueller's the sausage king of Chicago. I can't even say that. Ferris is like a free spirit. He's, what did we do that one time? We were like, who is id, who is ego, and who is super ego?
You
Ferris
did that.
is
I was
id.
not involved.
Yeah, well, I did it.
Yeah.
And Ferris is id. Ferris is impulse. Ferris is a free spirit.
How do you like working with, how do you like working with Mia Sara?
She's a doll. Mia's a doll. Mia's Sarah. Very cute, very smart. You're gonna love her a lot.
This is Mike.
That was a miniature dirigible, also known as a Zeppelin. You're good at this, you know?
Thank you. Ready? Okay, action, fellas. How do you like working in Chicago?
Well, how do we like working in Chicago?
I'm sorry. You're working on Ferris Bueller's Day Off right now, is that right?
Right around the corner.
Yep. Are you enjoying the picture?
Yeah, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off? What?
Okay, don't worry about
Act? I love it. I love it so much.
It's been a good time working on Ferris Bueller's Day Off. What do you think, Mia?
It's been great.
That's what I think.
It's been great.
As Cameron, what is Cameron's life outside of Ferris? Do you have a girlfriend? Have you had any girlfriends?
No.
No, none. Are you a virgin?
Yeah.
You are a virgin.
No
Right.
doubt about it.
Really? Has that been a tough adjustment for you?
I think Cameron's probably a little uneasy around Sloane.
Yeah, that's an interesting
Because,
thing
you
that
know,
I think has happened. In
She's
the film.
cute and
Yeah, I think Cameron and Sloane have a really special relationship.
But
It's just
there's a bit of sexual tension there, would you say? A little.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
little.
A little tension.
Nothing to write a novel about.
It's better though when all people are friends though. I mean, it's not really that bad if I think they might be friends if Sloane wasn't going out with Ferris. I mean, they might be friends. But anyway.
And we're rolling.
Quiet, please. Rolling. We're right there. Speed.
Marker.
Action.
Is everything to your satisfaction?
Yes. A little trouble identifying the main course.
Sweetbreads.
Uh-huh. And what might that be?
Pancreas.
As in the gland that has important functions in digestion and metabolism?
Yeah.
It secretes a thick, colorless fluid containing digestive enzymes?
Among other things.
Home of the world-famous Isles of Langerhans?
Yes, indeed.
Excuse me. A check, please.
Cut.
Okay. Okay. Hi, Jeffrey Jones.
Hi, Matthew Braddock. Where'd you get those blues?
Why do you think your character is so obsessed with catching Ferris Bueller, my character?
It's because it says in the script. No. It's because Ferris Bueller is such a successful little bugger. He gets away with all of this stuff, doesn't he?
Yeah, he
He
does.
has panache, verve.
And why do you
a
dislike?
zest for life.
Why do you dislike
He's not
all of that?
part of, because Rooney lives kind of a drone's existence here. With, you know, he's sort of king of the drones, and doesn't see any reason why you should be pulling one over on this person, Rooney, who is smart and powerful and is in charge of ordering destinies. And
Why
you're
should I be
diverging.
having fun and not
Yeah.
you when you work so hard? I can understand that. And you like the character is interesting to you?
Yeah. The interesting thing is that it, you know, how it moves along, how it takes off. You know, it's always how you pull it off the page and what, you know, how things spin off and grow and get better.
Are a lot of things different than what were on the page and how they were on the
I think
page?
it's all essentially there. It's just how you know, in your situation, I don't know how. Certainly, in my situation, it's. You know, you rehearse something and then you get some ideas, and then John adds something, and then it doesn't so much grow as it gets more specific and better.
There's a lot of physical comedy from Rooney in this film. I mean, you have a lot of that kind of stuff of limping and being hurt by dogs and that.
Yes.
Have you done a lot of that? Do you like that? Do you like physical stuff?
Well, it's not the Three Stooges.
Oh no,
It's close, but
no,
it's
I know,
not quite.
But it's physical. I don't
Yeah,
mean
yeah.
it's too big or anything.
No,
or hammy. I just mean like it's a lot
I think
of
it's
movement.
no. Well, I don't even think of it in terms of that. I guess I'm not very ordered as far as that goes. It's sort of like saying, "Do you enjoy doing comedy?"
Yeah,
as
kind of
opposed
still
to
like,
tragedy.
what's the
It's kind of
difference?
like, yeah, exactly.
I know.
Which probably isn't very interesting from the world at large's point of view, but it's all the same virtually.
Yeah.
It seems to me.
It's true.
But yes, I do, and I especially enjoyed Falling in the Mud.
Oh, I thought you were very good at that. Do you think I'm like Ferris at all?
I think you're a little more like Cameron.
That's
I think you're really pretty tightly wrapped.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, you're a swinging guy some of the time. You flip flop.
I flip flop.
Yeah, I'd say about 50% Cameron, about 50% Ferris.
And what are you about, like 50?
I'm about 90% Cameron and about 7% Ferris.
Where's the other three?
Lee Harvey Oswald. No, I am nothing like Lee Harvey Oswald. And neither is Cameron. And neither are you.
I don't know how Lee Harvey Oswald got it.
I don't know.
Anybody?
Are you sick of working with me yet?
I'm not sick of working with you. I'm sick of hanging out with you.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah.
The work is still, you know, very
That's
nice.
fun.
But, you know, I've just seen you most every night for about a year and a half, and I've kind of had enough. you
Yeah.
know?
Up like to here.
So I hope when we finish this film, I don't have to see it too much.
Yeah. That can be arranged. It was wonderful talking to you. I'll see you later.
Don't leave me alone, Alan. That's it. Stop.